What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Normal America Show. Back at my normal time slot. Did a little chess playing, yelled at some people this afternoon, but I'm back. I'm here in my normal slot, so it's good to be here. Glad you all could join me for this fantastic evening. Got a good show. Gonna be talking about FBI corruption tonight. Maybe some audience choice, like to be done by 11:30, at latest midnight tonight. So no staying up until the wee hours of the morning, if I could help it. But I'm sure someone will come on and say I've insulted their grandfather because I'm not for perpetual, never-ending war. You know how it is. What characters I run into. Never-ending war. You're a fascist if you don't want war and nuclear conflict. You're a xenophobe. You're a fascist if you don't want lockdowns. Yeah. You're a prude if you don't want to shove Molly up your rectum. Yeah, just the normal crew that I'm normally dealing with. Everyday, normal lefties. What can you do? So it's great to be here tonight. I watched, last night I knew as I started streaming that Tucker Carlson had Tony Bobulinski on. And for those that don't know, Tony was the person who was the business partner of Hunter Biden, who has the proof that Hunter Biden committed fraud. He was the one who did an interview right before the 2020 election, showing the corruption of Hunter Biden, alleging 10% going to the big guy who was Joe Biden, basically being involved in business ventures with the Communist government of China. Then he basically was not taken serious by anyone but Tucker Carlson. The intel agencies said that was a Russian hoax, that it was a hoax, that Hunter Biden's laptop was being investigated. The rest of the mainstream media didn't cover Bobulinski or the laptop, really. They censored people that tried to do it. And then the election happened. Joe Biden wins by 40,000 votes in 3 key states. And then they say, oops, our bad, that wasn't a hoax. Our bad, we shouldn't have censored it. So we'll be talking about that this evening. Short of the implications is what that means. There's other stories we could talk about. There was more evidence that was coming out of a list. Robbie Starbuck was tweeting about this, a list that basically came out of money that's going to places like the Atlantic Council, who's then being used as the hatchet men for the Biden administration and for the Department of Justice, FBI, Democrats in general, to go after people that they consider spreading disinformation. Of course, those people are always on the right. And so that's your government tax dollars paying to censor people with your point of view. That's what's happening there. There's other things that we could cover. Rakita Law apparently just got taken off of YouTube. Apparently Keffel's crew is bragging that they did this because Rakita Law apparently was mass reported to the law firm they work at by trans activists in Keffel's community, and they signed their names to documents. And so Rakita Law was going to release that information of the people that falsely accused him of heinous things, trying to get him fired from his job. You see this oftentimes on the censorious left. They're cry bullies. They will attempt to do any harsh thing they can to you, get you censored, get you doxxed, do whatever. But then even when their names are publicly out there, they think that you discussing them is out of bounds. It's dangerous. It's harmful to them. And this is straight from Keffel's crew. It's from the Antifa crew. It goes all the way to the journalistic crew. There's a good Twitter thread that came out today that temporarily got removed. I think it's back up. And it was discussing how so many of these journalists come from ridiculously wealthy families like Ben Collins, Taylor Lorenz, etc. And they do an excellent job of making sure their lives are private. It's very difficult to even use search engines to find much about their lives. But they pretend to be these sort of for the people type people as they're going after grandmas that post memes and outing them publicly. But they demand their privacy as ridiculous millionaires that work for multinational corporations. It's always the same tactics with them. If you missed my show earlier today, we had someone come on, which maybe I should cut back on the name calling. Maybe I shouldn't. Someone called on or someone chatted on my chat and was very concerned about Herschel Walker lying about being in law enforcement. Was very concerned about it. I said, yeah, I guess I'm unaware of the story, but if he did that, that's bad. But he hadn't heard of Ralph Warnock, the guy Ralph that is running against Herschel Walker. Didn't hear of him. And this is what I was talking about. And I was crude about it because I get tired of dealing with these people. Of course, the shift to others platform is needed. By the way, let me pitch. I do have a Rumble channel. I'm not live streaming on Rumble because it costs money to live stream on Rumble, but my live videos should go up there the day after. So you can check out my Rumble channel. And also, I am live streaming to comfy.stream. If you set up an account there, you'll see robnoerr as live streaming right now. So that's a platform where I get a far greater percentage of any donations you give, and they're not going to censor me. So it's a tactic that you see quite common, though, of these people on the left where they pretend like, it's whataboutism to point out their hypocrisy. And the entire point is, it's people like, what do you want the conversation to be? I mean, I could say this ever. There's Galil, right? Galil's probably lied in his life, right? And let's say Galil's up for a promotion in his job. And someone comes up and says, we have credible evidence that Galil lied when he said that he tipped 30% last night. In reality, it was only a 10% tip. And I'm like, I guess that's not a good thing to lie about something like that. You know, but I guess we've all lied about something. And not a good thing, but yeah, I still think Galil deserves the promotion, given that the other guy lied about paying his taxes and embezzlement charges that he had been convicted of previously, and he lied about that. So I think we'll go with Galil. And then the person goes, now wait, what's the other person have anything to do with it? What's that have anything to do with it? Isn't it bad to lie about how much you tip? Yes, I guess it's bad to lie about how much you tip. Nonetheless, we all do things that are bad. I don't think that that's big on the scale of, things we should be concerned of given this election, given the character issues that we see with Ralph Warnock as well. We're not talking about Ralph Warnock. That's whataboutism. That's whataboutism. So just be aware that this is a tactic that's often used. When you control the narrative, you're allowed to just focus, and they expect us to be, I say it all the time, our greatest weakness is our greatest strength. We'll actually hear people out and give our honest opinions and try to hold people to a standard. We try to do that. That's what I try to do, at least. And so they take advantage of that they'll always ignore the people they cheer for. They'll even lie about who they cheer for and who they support. I don't support Democrats. I don't even know who the Democrat is. It's bullshit. It's a lie. That's what it is. And they want you to focus. Ted Cruz went to Cancun. Okay, that's bad, I guess. What more is there to talk? Is that what we're going to say for 3 hours? Now let's talk about how it's really bad that Ted Cruz went to Cancun. Yeah, I guess it's really bad Ted Cruz went to Cancun. But now let's talk about how it's really, really bad how Ted Cruz went to Cancun. Sure, I guess that's bad. Ted Cruz went to Cancun. Same shit over and over, right? Okay, how does what Ted Cruz did compare to what we've seen many other politicians do, particularly on the other side? Telling you have to be locked down while they violated those lockdowns. Ted Cruz didn't say you had to be locked down. Yeah, it's bad he left during a storm, but on the ground of sins, just someone leaving and abdicating, getting to a safer place when their constituents can't. It's not a good image, not necessarily a good thing, but that's far less of a crime morally than telling people they have to lock down while you yourself refuse to lock down. But the same people complaining about Ted Cruz going to Cancun, they didn't have shit to say about that. Well, we're talking about Ted Cruz. So, you could be like me and for amusement, you could deal with these people and sort of point out their stupidity. Or you could just say, I'm just not going to take you seriously. You don't deserve to be taken seriously. That's it. Thanks, Tony Teb. Peace and blessings to you, too. But maybe I should calm down a little on these people. So, I say we jump right in. Let's see. We got Sneeko getting kicked off YouTube. We got Rakita getting kicked off YouTube. Let's see if I can join. Yeah, Vaush did dodge me again today, as Vaush is wont to do. Now, the little Vaushite, remember Ellen DeGenerate, the guy who shoves Molly up his rectum? The Vaushite, that's what the periphery, they'll just say, Rob's he's a gish galloper. That's it. Rob's a gish galloper. That's what they'll say. Memes, General Alden, gish gallop. Yeah, let's see the clip. So Vaush was debating Martinez, who I think's a white nationalist. Those are the types of debates that Vaush could have. That's red meat. Oh, I just get to yell racism. His audience eats it up. He doesn't want to debate someone who could actually debate that he can't yell racism at. That doesn't help him. I'll pull up the clip 1 second. So anyways, he was debating on the Crucible versus this guy Martinez, and Super Chats get to ask questions. I don't know who asked this question. Aftershock sent me the video. I'll show you.
And then the last one is, Vaush, will you stop running and debate robnoerr 1v1?
Didn't I debate robnoerr?
You have not debated robnoerr.
Wait, I've talked to robnoerr, haven't I?
I guess they want a 1v1 debate.
Have I not directly? Oh, but he's such a maybe. I'll think about it.
Okay. All right, ladies. And then the last one.
Rob, I debated him. No, you didn't. Oh, well, he's a buffoon. I'll think about it. Yeah, Sneako's a good guy. Yeah. He knows who I am. He knows what he's doing. He knows he's running from me. Moderators have reached out to him to debate me in the past on topics of his choosing. He's chosen not to debate me. That's fine. Yeah, he didn't know who I was. Then I'm a buffoon, is what he was about to say. He doesn't want to debate anyone that he can't just scream racist at, which he'll try with me as well. Or that doesn't have a bigger audience than him, like Jordan Peterson. He would love to debate Jordan Peterson, but he doesn't want to debate me. Because he knows he has nothing to gain by it. He'll most likely get wrecked. His audience will have to meme their way through it. If he debates me, that's what it'll come down to. He'll just say, fallacy, gish gallop, meme, meme, meme. That's what he'll do. Yeah, I don't know much about Martinez. I watched a brief part of a debate he had with Destiny once, and to me, he came off as someone that I would say is probably racist. He's probably a white supremacist or a white nationalist. I hate to judge people based on small clips, but I don't know that he would even contend with that. I think he... So I debated 2v2 on the Hippy Dippy Championship, and then I was on 2 panels with Vaush. One was almost 2 years ago on the Hippy Dippy, where there were 9 of us, and one was on Modern Day Debates, where there was 9 of us. But he's never debated me one-on-one, and he doesn't want to. He wants to be able to hide behind people. That's what he did on the panels. So, whatever. I'm going to waste my time talking about Vaush. He's too busy. He's too busy recommending that we shoot people that are lawfully open carrying, like people did in Portland when they murdered that Trump supporter. That's what he said. We should. He wants a society where they're shooting people like those people in Portland out the windows. That's what he said. It's on tape. Check it out. But I digress. I'm not going to waste any more time. He knows where I'm at. I sent him a tweet. It was just like, look, I know you're running from me. You pick a topic. You pick the moderator. We'll debate. Let's go. He could even pick some stupid ass topic he wants that he talks about all the time, like trans issues or something. That's fine. Anyways, enough of that. Let's talk about Tony Bobulinski. Yeah, I have no respect for the white nationalist crew. I don't. I've debated them. I've made my feelings known. So. But the last thing I'll say about this, a lot of the big lefty streamers are running from me. They are. Destiny doesn't want to debate me. He'll moderate and basically be a second debater while Pisco debates me poorly. That's something they'll do. But they know. Some of the smaller lefty streamers, like that Justin Freaking guy, he wants to debate me because he thinks that you can make a name for yourself. Because despite what they say, they know that those big lefty streamers know me. And so if one of them, and listen, let me be clear. I'm confident. I am. I might be an arrogant ass, you might say. And in some ways, that's sort of true. But I'm also humble in some ways. I'm a very dichotomous person. I'll tell you right now, every one of you that are watching on chat could wreck me in a debate. Probably in several debates. If you find a topic that you just are better prepared to debate than me, you'll win. And there's a lot of things that really matter in life that people that barely graduated high school could shame me in. For example, I find people that work with their hands, that are carpenters, that are welders, that are mechanics, that are truck drivers. I find them to be some of the most amazing people. The backbone of this country. I suck at all of that. You put me in any sort of discussion, any sort of debate on any of those topics with 95% of the people in my community, they would absolutely crush me. Absolutely. Do I think transsexuals should be able to adopt? It's a difficult question. Probably it would be difficult to say that they shouldn't be allowed to adopt. They would have to undergo psychological evaluation, just like anyone with any sort of mental disorder, to make sure that they weren't harmful to themselves or someone who was prone to violence. But yeah, they should probably be allowed to adopt. I don't see how you could legally remove that unless you said that it was enough of an illness that they wouldn't be able to. Would be what I think. But I have no problem with an adult being transsexual. I've never treated them like shit. I even go out of my way to facilitate conversation to use the pronouns that they want, even if I don't agree with the biological necessity of those pronouns. As an adult, you can make whatever choice you want. Sexualizing children is different. What's up? Let's talk finance. Great to hear from you. Yeah, D Weezy, the word is that basically Rakita was going to show the paperwork he had on the ethics complaint that was filed to his law firm. And that ethics complaint had many people sign their real name. And he was going to show that on air. And so Keffel's crew is alluding to on Twitter that this was a mass doxing. And that's why he got removed. Because they thought that him releasing their public name that they had attributed publicly to filing these ethics complaint would be doxing them. And so that's why he was reported and removed, is what their claim is. So Keffel's crew is celebrating that now. Anyways, enough talking about Keffel's. I don't give a shit. Just cry bully, someone who is using their identity because there was nothing extraordinary about them. And so they had to be a perpetual victim, using their identity, using the fact that they call themselves trans as their primary identity so that they have something that they could weaponize. Because like many of these people that play perpetual victimhood, they're the racist and the bigots of the past. Instead of the sports people, the jocks giving swirlies, now it's them doing it metaphorically. They're just bullies that are looking for an excuse. And they're rewarded over and over again. Anywho, what was I talking about? The people that don't want to debate me. So the truth is, someone one of these days is going to whoop my ass on a debate. It'll happen. No one's infallible. It certainly ain't me. And there have been debates that I could admit there were certain parts of I don't think I did well in. There have been debates that even if I thought I won, that I think that the person I talked to did very well. And I could see a reasonable person thinking, yeah, I agree with them more on that side of the issue. You could take me, says, let's talk finance. Maybe. Do I find it scary there are many people locked in a basement as we speak over COVID? I don't know what you mean. So all the time, I'll have people call me out on my chat, on Twitter. I'll say, you want to come on and talk about it? Come on. And if someone was smart and really wanted to get me, right, they would goad me on an issue that they knew they had the goods on. And then say, yeah, I'll come on. But somehow, even when people challenge me and prepare, they're just never ready to go. Or they're not that impressive. Sure, you could stick to the truth and still lose a debate. Because sometimes you're not debating something, it's just the truth. There are things in this world that aren't obvious truths. There are things that are complicated. A lot of the issues, for example, Aftershock and me are talking about whether or not gay marriage should be legal or whether it should be, the benefits should be given and it be called a civil union. And then other people were saying, no, the benefits shouldn't be given and it shouldn't, right? Like, those are all threshold arguments, right? That's like, Aftershock would say, I think it's going too far to say that you can't give gay people in a civil union the same benefits you give married people. Aftershock would say, that's a step too far for him. Others would say, no, you're wrong, right? No, right. That's what I'm saying. Aftershock would, right? So there are different stages of that. And a lot of these are like values judgments or threshold arguments. And you could be more articulate and persuade someone, even if you think you're right. The person that you think's wrong could be more persuasive. And it happens all the time, right? I did policy debate in college. I wasn't the best policy debater in the country. I wasn't probably in the top 50. I was maybe in the top 100, but I wasn't in the top 50. And the top like 20 blew me out of the water. And they could take an issue that was even they would disagree with and destroy me because they were prepared, because they were intelligent, they were more skillful than me on those sorts of things. That style of persuasion, though, is different than just having a conversation or talking in public. A lot of those people that were better than me at the game of policy debate, if we were having a public style debate like you would see between two candidates, I think I would do better than them. Because they didn't know how to talk to sort of a layperson audience. They knew how to talk to a specific person talking to humans. If it's possible, be able to talk about these issues in a way that the language you wouldn't be able to understand, to be able to say these things rapid fire paced, if you wouldn't understand it, to be able to win. Now, they then go into the next argument to be able to argue that they've been talking about these things since 1943. You know, the idea that these professors would be able to say these things during the Cultural Revolution, and wouldn't understand it now. We need to get back to the land of the Native American, things like that, because we're talking about things like postmodernism, people like Heidegger and other things like that. Rob doesn't understand. Now, if we go into Spanish, we'd be able to talk about how the United States and the West, we'd say the West is the best, but we have to judge them by Vietnam, of things like that. If we're going to look at Heidegger and talk about him, think of like the Nazis, right? They'd be able to talk like that, and you'd be like, they're just better than me at presenting. I'm not saying it was just cheap tricks that I was smarter than them and they could only beat me because, that. But that's part of it. That's part of it. It's not unfair at all. That's not what I'm saying. They were more skilled than me. They learned to play that game better than me. I think that I'm naturally a pretty persuasive person and a good public speaker, and I think that a lot of those people wouldn't have been. Some would have been. Some would have been better than me at that as well. I'm not saying it. But I'm just saying it just goes to show the different skill set. But I don't claim to be, some undefeated debater that can never lose, and that's not what I'm saying. I have my opinions. I think that they're well backed. I try to be as good faith as possible. I think I'm funny. I think I'm entertaining. And I think I'm persuasive. And I also have something that many other people don't have, which is nothing to lose, really. At least nothing to lose by debating someone. With few exceptions. Obviously, if it leads to violence, like someone doxing and harassing my family, that's something to lose. But just in the context of like losing face or anything like that, what's the worst that could happen? Let's say that Let's Talk Finance calls in now and wants to debate, hypothetically, he's like, I want to talk Medicare for all. And let's say he blows me out of the water. So I guess I learned something. Now I'll redouble my efforts to look back into it. Maybe I'll change my position. Maybe I'll be convinced. Maybe I'll suspect that I just need to do better research and come up with better arguments as to why my opinion. But what's really the worst? That's fine. That's life. That's okay. Thanks, Gizmo. Yeah, Medicare's a disaster. Well, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, when I debated a convoy, I had people in my audience saying, Rob, you just don't understand. And it's true. I don't claim to be an expert on investments and economic production. I have a good bullshit detector. The Pirates, 62 games, yeah. What's that, 100 losses in? Yay. They did it. On a side note, I'm on a waiting list to go to Akron July 3rd next year to watch the Savannah Bananas. If you've never watched Savannah Banana baseball, it's hilarious. Yeah, I don't doubt that. Let's talk finance. Would I wear a White Lives Matter shirt? I don't know. I would wear it, I guess. I don't feel strongly about that slogan. I have no problem with the people that do say it. It'd probably get me fired from my job is probably what would happen. I do think white lives matter, but that's because I think all lives matter. I think black lives matter. And listen, here's the thing. Like, here's my take on this. I think Black Lives Matter as an organization is a sham, but I don't begrudge black people coming together and saying we feel that there are many areas that our communities are suffering from in this country. I absolutely agree. My issue isn't racial. I don't talk in terms of race. I don't have a problem with white people coming together and saying we think that there are racial things wrong, with this country targeting us. I agree. I agree with both of those groups. I don't begrudge anyone coming together as a group and identifying problems and solutions that they see for that group identity. If that group's religious, if that group's racial, if that group's your sex, if that group's your sexual orientation, if that group's your economic status. If a bunch of wealthy people want to come together and say, there are things that we're attacked for in this country unduly, that's true. Wealthy people oftentimes get maligned that they must be guilty by the sheer fact that they have wealth. They must have done something immoral. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe they busted their ass their whole life. Or maybe their parents busted their ass their whole life. And that's how they obtained wealth. There's nothing wrong with that. I disagree with some of the solutions. I obviously disagree with Black Lives Matter, the solutions that the organization, people that want to focus on white issues, some are totally reasonable. Some are racist. Some are white supremacists. Some are white nationalists. I disagree with those people, But my issue that I talk about a lot is basically people in rural America, working class people. I don't give a shit. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care what your sexual orientation is. That's irrelevant to me. I see the people that live around here. Some are Democrats, some are most are Republicans, let's be honest. Most are conservative, but some Democrats, hardworking people, some gay, not many. Some people of color, not many in my specific area, but there are a lot in rural Pennsylvania, rural America, people of color. There are a lot of gay people. I don't give a shit about that. I'm looking at that group. That's my group that I'm like, these people are getting shit on. No one represents them. No one in our culture talks favorably of them. They get mocked. Their economic prospects are dwindling every year. They're asked to make more and more sacrifices. The politicians that we elect don't do shit for us. That's who I speak for. So I would be a hypocrite if I said, well, I'm speaking for a group. And when I say speaking for, please don't mistake. I'm not saying I'm the voice for those people. I'm saying that's what's inspired me to speak. Some of those people will disagree with my positions, that's fine. But that's what inspires me. That's who I'm advocating for. So why do I care if a bunch of black people want to advocate for an issue or a bunch of white people? Let's talk about Tony Bobulinski. So I'm not going to show the videos, but what I will do is, let me see if I could link a video to Tucker Carlson's show last night. Now, I like Tucker. Are there things about Tucker that I disagree with that he's done in the past or positions he holds? Of course. There is no person that you'll ever 100% agree with. It just won't happen. I'm sure there are things that Tucker has said that I disagree with. I'm sure there's things that I don't even know that Tucker has said that I disagree with. Never mind the video. Well, you have to look for it. The video I had is no longer available. But if you look up Tucker's show from October 4th, 2022, that's what we'll be talking about. And I did see that on YouTube earlier today, and I think that it's worth talking the ramifications of this. Now, I'm not going to get mired down on super specifics of dates of emails and the names of the company. I know it's Sinohawk is the name of the company that we'll be talking about, but that's not really important. There are people that you could go to that have a greater understanding of our legal code and exactly what crimes are alleged to being committed, particularly the crime of fraud. But I'm just going to lay out the bare bones. And then what I think that I'm good is being able to explain how these things are so troubling to our society and so troubling when you look at sort of what's going on in our country. And so that's what my focus is. Now, to begin with, we have to go back in time to Hunter Biden's laptop. For those that don't know, if you've been living under a rock or if you only watch the mainstream media, Hunter Biden left a laptop at a laptop repair shop. That repairman tried to get that back legally. If Hunter Biden doesn't retrieve that laptop within a certain period of time, then that repair shop has ownership of it. This person reached out to law enforcement and said that he thought that there were things on there that were troubling. Let me be clear. Let me tell you what I'm not concerned with or won't be talking about. I don't care about Hunter Biden smoking crack. I don't care about Hunter Biden's sex life. I don't care about Hunter Biden hiring prostitutes. I do care if he was hiring underage prostitutes, which I don't know that I've seen definitive proof. I've heard allegations and things of that nature. But I only care about that in the sense of Hunter Biden. I don't think that you could judge Joe Biden even if his son committed heinous crimes. So all things considered, let's say, for example, that we would find out that Barack Obama's daughter, robbed a bank. I don't say, then Obama could never hold political office because of that. I would say, well, no. Maybe it speaks to his ability as a parent. Maybe not. Right? Hunter Biden's sex trafficking is irrelevant to this story in this sense. I only care as to how it involves his father or our political system. I care if he's sexually trafficking and the FBI is covering for him. I care if his father is vice president or his president was covering for him. That's different, Hurricane. That's what I'm saying. I'm differentiating those two things. But the criticism that comes from the left on this, and it would be a valid criticism if all of these other factors wasn't there, which is, fine, then don't elect Hunter Biden, impeach Hunter Biden. Oh, wait, he's not president. That's true. You don't just impart the sins of the son to the father. What you can do is say, did his father misuse his position in order to help his son? Or did his father misuse his position to benefit from the actions that his son was taking? That's the troubling area to me. So when the left says, oh, you're going to complain about Hunter smoking crack, I am not. Oh, you're going to complain about Hunter buying hookers, I am not. That is not what my complaint is. Because if that's where it ended, I would not be talking about Joe Biden at all in this context. That's what I mean by this. The story is that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's brother, Jim Biden, were basically selling the name of Joe Biden to our biggest rival and enemy, China, and to state Chinese actors. They were selling influence of Joe Biden in order to become personally rich. And Joe Biden was involved with it. That's the problem. The problem is that the FBI was covering up the crimes of Hunter Biden and the connections to Joe Biden. That's the problem. My focus is on Joe Biden and on the FBI. And to a lesser extent, but also very important, to the media and social media companies that knew that these stories were true, but chose to cover them up because they were influencing an election. That's where my focus is. I don't really care to look at pictures of Hunter Biden naked on a water slide. I just don't give a shit. I don't. And I have to be honest with you. When it comes to prostitution, although I think it's unethical, although I think it's a terrible thing morally to do for yourself, I'm not going to get that fired up about it unless it was underage people. Yes, you could say, but many of these hookers may have been sexually trafficked. And that's true. A lot of people in the prostitution ring are. But a lot of you probably watch pornography, and guess what? A lot of those people are coerced into having sex, and you could say were trafficked. So I'm not casting stones to that level. If it'd be different if Hunter Biden knew this was a Uyghur Muslim that was a sex slave. That's different. Well, evil so fresh. I mean, geopolitical rival, an enemy. If money was being used, right? Government monies was going for Hunter Biden to participate in illicit activities. That's troubling. But again, that's small potatoes. I'm not really concerned, for example, if it turns out Don Jr. took a trip to the Bahamas through our tax dollars. I mean, it sucks, and things like that need to be curtailed on both sides of the ledger. But that's far less troubling than the very serious things that we're talking about with the cover-up of this story. So what I'm focusing on is, one, there was an obvious federal crime committed by Hunter Biden, according to Tony Bobulinski, and he claims that he has thousands of documents to back it up. And that is a crime of fraud, felony fraud, in order to defraud Tony Bobulinski and others of a lawful business arrangement that they were in. And that the FBI is aware of that and chose to sit on that allegation, no doubt for political reasons. Second, that fraud was being engaged with members of the Communist government of China, who is more of an enemy to us than Russia. And we just had a 4-year investigation, 6 years, accusing Trump of being a Russian because it would be that serious if there was compromat. If the Russians had compromat on Trump in the form of a P-tape. Well, what if they have compromat, the Chinese, on Biden in the form of they were paying him and his son millions of dollars? Selling out our country to our enemy for personal benefit. That's what I'm concerned with. And third, and perhaps most concerning, is that once more, our FBI is primarily a Gestapo organization that is just the enforcement arm of the establishment, particularly the Democratic Party. They need to be immediately disbanded. They are doing more damage to this country and influencing elections in a negative way more than any foreign state actor could possibly do. And this is another in a long line. The FISA warrants to spy on Trump, the leaks against Trump, the raiding Mar-a-Lago, the going after school board parents, the going after Project Veritas, the allowing Antifa to run amok, the allowing the people riding for George Floyd to run amok, the allowing the people to attack pregnancy centers to run amok, to allow the people to protest outside Kavanaugh's house illegally to run amok. All of this, a long line of the FBI needs to be immediately disbanded. Here is another blatant situation. Again, it's so bad. The instances of FBI corruption and double standards are so bad, you forget half the shit they did that was a big deal. It just keeps coming out over and over and over. What's up, Jeff? Great to hear from you, man. Besides me, who else is gay? Maybe you? I don't know. My friend in real life, Jeff, comes on, accuses me of being gay. There, look, my view count's going down by the second. And then wall bottle, right? And you can see, I mean, you really have to wonder, these NPCs, do you think Wall Bottle's a bot or is he just an NPC, moron? Right, I understand the criticism that will be of all this stuff is people like Wall Bottle, if he's not a bot, they don't give a shit about FBI corruption. They don't give a shit if the president of the United States is selling out the country to our greatest adversary geopolitically. They don't care. They don't care. All they care is, how can I make an excuse and then deflect to Trump? That's all they give a shit about. That's it. That's it. They'll just repeat these NPC phrases. They have no substance to it. Even after I preempted and said, look, I'm specifically not talking about Hunter Biden smoking crack and things like that. I'm specifically talking about the connection to his father and the FBI and what they did to cover this up. Doesn't matter. He acts like I didn't even say, Trump was bad and Hunter Biden's not elected. Right, got it. Be gone. What's up, Ninja Gundam? How you doing? Now, it's complicated, but what Tony Bobulinski said this time on Tucker Carlson's show that stands out is he said he was able to present clear evidence of fraud. And I'm going to explain this as best as I can, but I do recommend that you look up the video and see for yourself exactly in his words, because this isn't going to be verbatim. He basically said this, that he and Jim Biden, who's Joe Biden's brother, and Hunter Biden, who's obviously Joe Biden's son, came to a business relationship where they were going to basically operate as a firm, that they were putting in half the money, and these Chinese, thank you Gizmo, thanks for the sub, man, I appreciate it. This Chinese entities, governmental entities, people that owned that were basically government actors in China were putting in half the funds, millions upon tens of millions of dollars. And then that was going to be a sort of a way for them to invest in assets around the world. And he said that he expected the Chinese government to push billions through the company they created, Sinohawk, and then they would be able to invest in assets such as infrastructure in the United States, energy industry, other things like that. So China gets the benefit of, they can't as a government do this, but what they can do is use the name of the Bidens to look like they're on the up and up, invest in these things, and then they're owned by the government of China. Originally, I believe he said that these Chinese entities put $5 million in to get started and then floated a loan to the Bidens for $5 million. So there was $10 million startup, but they anticipated, he claimed when asked, Bobulinski himself expected to make millions of dollars, and he said no doubt the Bidens expected to make billions, that they had assumed billions upon billions of dollars would have flown in from these Chinese government entities that they would have then been kicking around to investments around the world. So they signed all the paperwork for this, and what the questions I have is this. This is apparently legal for Bobulinski to be doing. Now, you have to fill out the proper paperwork. And so what Bobulinski, it seems to me, is accusing is that they circumvented that. That he started to see that they weren't playing by the book. That they were hiding where the money was coming from. Bobulinski didn't want to do that, the way he alleges. He wanted everything to be legal and by the book. And what happened was they had lengthy contractual agreement, which had a serial number on it, written up, pages upon pages of legalese document that I'm not going to understand. And what had happened was he found out that the Bidens went behind his back, cut him out of this, and basically removed him and his company, and then put the Biden-owned company themselves, which is apparently fraud. You can't do that. And so he says, I have evidence of this. This is textbook fraud. I was defrauded by the Bidens. This is fraud. Now, previously, Bobulinski had talked about, he had text exchange showing where the money would go, and it talked about 10% going to the big guy, who he said he knew was Joe Biden. Despite Joe Biden saying his son had never taken money from Chinese entities, Bobulinski has the records that that's not true. And then Joe Biden also said that he was unaware of any business arrangements. Tony Bobulinski said he personally met with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden talked to him about these business relationships, and that he was the big guy and he was getting 10%. That means that Joe Biden, during his tenure as vice president, was using his name as vice president, and during the run-up to running for president of the United States, using that influence to get personally rich off of subterfuge to allow the Chinese government to buy assets around the world, benefiting our enemy to personally enrich himself. That's what Joe Biden was doing. And then lying publicly about it. Now, no one cares. People cared. Remember, I talked about this quite often. Why was the big deal about Trump's tax returns? What was that big? What was the big deal there? See, people want you to believe that the big deal was, oh, we wanted to see if whether or not Trump paid all of his taxes. Did he have legal loopholes that he used? How much did he pay? Is he really worth his net value that he claims to be? That's not why they were looking at his tax returns. What they were trying to do is say, look, Trump's tax return shows that he was making money in Russia. That's what they wanted. And then they could say, ha, international businessman did business internationally, proves he's a stooge of Putin. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to keep, remember, the actual collusion with Russians that occurred was the Hillary team colluding with a suspected Russian spy named Igor Dashchenko, to then make up disinformation about Trump's team, which the FBI happily took and then paid that suspected Russian spy. So there was Russia collusion. It's just it was with the Hillary team and the FBI. They were the ones colluding with Russians, spreading disinformation to help influence an election and to help take down a duly elected president. Another reason that the FBI is incredibly corrupt. But that would have been the proof they needed. If Trump did business in Russia, they'd have said, see, it wouldn't have proved anything. So what? It's legal to do business in Russia. He wasn't even a politician at the time, so what's the issue? But that's what it was about. But just know this, if they would have found out, even if Trump had legal business deals in Russia, they'd have said, that's proof that he's a Russian spy, that he's a stooge of Vladimir Putin. That's what the Democrats would have said. That's what our propaganda media would have said. That's what James Comey and the FBI would have alluded to. But when we have Joe Biden lying and hiding the fact that his son was personally being enriched by covering for the communist government of China to buy assets in places like the United States, not a peep from them. Oh, well, they say so. Same when it came to, don't take my word for it, take Biden's word, take Obama's word, the Obama administration, which Biden was vice president of. They said that Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company, was corrupt and was ran by this man Zlochevsky, who was a strong man, who was a pro-Putin strong man. He was corrupt. That's not my words. That's the Obama administration. That's the Biden administration. And yet he hired Hunter Biden to sit on the board of directors for his company and paid Hunter Biden near $100,000 a month. They don't have a problem with that. No problem there. That's fine, they say. Never mind that Joe Biden then issued a quid pro quo to get the prosecutor fired that was looking into his son. Never mind that Joe Biden personally met, and the state, I'm not so sure personally, the State Department, which Joe Biden was the vice president of, personally met with the lawyers from that corrupt organization, Burisma. And then not 2 weeks later, Joe Biden was on a plane issuing a quid pro quo to fire the prosecutor looking into that company. So the fact that this occurred, that it seemed as, remember, FARA violations are important, right? FARA violations, that's one of the ways they got Paul Manafort, Trump's campaign manager, lobbying for foreign entities without filling out proper paperwork. Does it sound like Hunter Biden filled out proper paperwork for this? Getting millions of dollars for Chinese state entities? No, it doesn't sound like it. Is he being investigated for FARA violations? Doesn't appear so. See, it only matters if you're connected to Trump. FARA violations for Hunter Biden, no problem. And Joe Biden was publicly lying about it over and over. I had no idea what my son was doing. He didn't do anything wrong. They don't care. Now, as bad as all that is, and it's very bad, it's the other part of what Bobulinski said that's worse, that's more troubling. And what he said was that before, I believe, he talked to Tucker Carlson, he contacted the FBI and he sat with them for hours and gave them images from his phone, emails, metadata, thousands upon thousands of pages. To the FBI. And the FBI told him that an agent named Thibault would be getting in touch with him. Now, this is the same, I hope I'm saying it wrong, Thibault, the same agent that there are now whistleblowers coming forward saying that's basically a hatchet man for Biden, for the Democrats, burying cases, using the FBI as the personal arm of the Democratic Party and of the Biden administration. And Bobulinski says he was never contacted again. That was 2020. In other words, just like with Anthony Weiner's laptop, the FBI was doing their best to sit on evidence of corruption in order to help Democrats win elections. That's what they were doing. Now, that's not the only evidence we have of that. Because then if you take what Bobulinski's saying here, he gave all this information to the FBI, never got contacted by them again. But now if we take also what Zuckerberg admitted on Joe Rogan's show, which was the FBI around this time then, comes to them and to social media companies like Facebook and says, there's going to be a data dump and it's going to be Russia interfering again. So you should probably make sure that it doesn't get out there. So the FBI, instead of taking the allegation seriously and investigating, what they did was they went to social media companies and told them to bury the story. That's what they did. And intel agents came out, 40-something former intel agents, including former heads of the CIA like John Brennan, came out and said, this is Russian disinformation, this laptop. It would have been easy to confirm. All the FBI had to do was look. It was obvious that this was Hunter Biden's laptop. All they had to do was contact Tony Bobulinski, and he would have shown them, no, that's his laptop. I have the emails on the other end that were going through that laptop. All the media had to do, all CNN or the New York Times or the Washington Post, all they had to do was get a hold of Bobulinski and say, listen, before we run this story about Hunter Biden's laptop, we'd like to know if this is true. And Bobulinski said he could have shown them the goods, said, yeah, absolutely true. He's like, I could have given them metadata. But they didn't. Instead, they said it was Russia disinformation, the media, social media companies, and our intel agencies, and they censored people that wanted to talk about it. The same intel agencies and media that ran with any bullshit rumor of Donald Trump as if it was true. He's a stooge of Vladimir Putin. That's what they did. Now, these same people are foaming at the mouth that Elon Musk might buy Twitter because, my God, he might leave dangerous disinformation on there. But they don't have shit all to say that a week before the election, they were telling everyone and gaslighting everyone in this country that the actual real story of the Bidens profiting off of our enemy, China, and covering up for it, that was actually just a lie from Russia, planted by Russia. And so it was such a dangerous lie, we actually had to censor people. And Bobulinski says in this interview, which is apt, he says if you take the states of, I believe it was Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin, basically those three states were decided by 45,000 votes combined. If those three states, if those 45,000 votes go the other way, Trump's president. 45,000. That means you only need 23,000 to change their votes and vote for Trump instead of Biden. Do you think censoring this story could have swung 23 million votes or 23,000 votes? Of course it could have. Remember, the same people that said that it was an attack on our democracy, that 12 Russians supposedly put $50,000 of ads on Facebook and Pokemon Go, have no problem with the FBI lying to help the Biden administration, to cover up crimes that they've committed, to lie and say that those crimes are actually never happened and are Russian disinformation, to coerce social media companies into censoring people that want to talk about that, and to our entire mainstream media save Tucker Carlson and a couple of people going along with that charade. They don't think that's important. Yeah, the trolls come in when I start wrecking lefties. That's what happens. Probably Vaush fans after he embarrassed himself again today, avoiding me. No one gives a shit. None of these Democrats care. None of them. None of them care about it. They told you for 4 years, oh, disinformation's so dangerous. People posting Alex Jones is a danger. You know, the people are lying about the Democrats. They're lying about Hillary. They're lying about Biden. They're lying about Obama. We need to stop that. Joe Biden's setting up a ministry of truth. Democrats are very concerned. Where are all they? How many of them have spoken up? Now, I'm proud to say, I'm making fun. Yeah, I'm sorry, Medieval Mike. By talking about this FBI corruption, I'm spitting on the grave of that guy last night whose grandparents fought in World War II. Now, I'm proud to say that I've been on the front line since the election of saying, to me, I haven't spoken much on whether or not there was election day shenanigans. Partly because you can't on YouTube. And partly because I think that there's a lot of people saying that, and people are missing what might be the bigger story. And that is, let's assume there was no cheating. Let's assume that it was the most secure election ever. Okay, let's assume that. They literally drug a guy across the finish line that wasn't campaigning the last 2 months, who has dementia, who was selling influence in previous slots to enrich his family, his corrupt son, and then was blatantly lying about it. He did so in Ukraine, did so with China. That's more troubling. Because if the FBI, in collaboration with tech companies and social media companies, and in collaboration with our corrupt mainstream media, are able to influence a plurality of this country to say the people we don't like are always corrupt and we'll say whatever we want about them, but you're not allowed to speak of the obvious truthful corruption of the people we support, that's the end of the country. That's it. That's even worse than switching votes on a voting machine. Because if the switching votes on the voting machine happened, we could prove that hypothetically. And then you could arrest those people. If the American people were just willing to accept, our bad, sorry the intel agencies covered up the crimes of Hunter and Joe Biden, and then coerced social media companies to censor it before an election, thereby influencing the election so the person we wanted win it. Our bad, we promise it won't happen again. If the American people are willing to accept that, it'll happen in perpetuity. Who knows what stories we won't be allowed to talk about going into 2024. We already can't talk a lot about COVID. We already can't talk a lot about the 2020 election. Now they're trying to make it illegal to talk about medical facilities that are engaged in hormone therapy and genital surgery. They're trying to say they're actually advocating that it should be a crime to discuss those truthful procedures that are going on. And little by little, if no one pushes back, it'll get worse and worse. Until it'll be illegal for you to criticize, to go against the official narrative. First, they'll ban you from being able to speak like they're doing now. Then they'll ban you from engaging in our economy by saying you can't use the banking system. You can't use entities like PayPal. Then they'll knock on your door like they did to this conservative activist in the UK the other day here. Knocked on this woman's door, took her off to jail because allegedly she posted on Kiwi Farms, interrogated her, took her devices because she was saying things that the trans community didn't like. Rakita Law seems to have his channel just removed from YouTube. Why? Because he was going to release the public names of the people that falsely and maliciously reported him, trying to get him fired as a lawyer and get his law license removed. And we allow, and look, I understand the left. One, there are the establishment simps in brown shirts. They don't care. They want this corruption. That's fine. Then there are the lefties that accept it, and they accept it because Orange Man bad. Whatever it takes, the Sam Harris types of the world. Well, you know, if we have to cheat, if we have to collude, If we have to censor people falsely, that's fine, because Orange Man bad. Sam Harris nailed it. But let's not forget to cast blame another place where it needs to be cast. People like me. People like you. Because we allow them to get away with it. And I'm not saying, oh, that means that we have to pick up arms. Violence is stupid. It's immoral. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is we allow ourselves to get distracted. We allow ourselves to fall in the trap of whatever the news of the day is, that's what we're talking about. This is cut and dry. They stole the election. Provably. Not with voting machines. Not with ballot harvesting. Maybe those things occurred, maybe not. Not speaking of those. They stole the election because they used the most powerful law enforcement and intel agency in the history of the world to use the most powerful propaganda and narrative control system in the history of the world, the mainstream media and social media, that controls the volume, the vast amount of the social discussion that's going on. At the key time before the election, they knowingly covered up for the crimes of Joe Biden and censored people that wanted to talk about them. I would love to go in Rakita law. Get me in contact with them. I'd love to. And I'll still go on a panel and we'll talk about what? What are we going to talk about in the panel? Huh? Now, that's not to say that you can't talk about any other issues. And just for the sake of content, what am I going to do? Talk about the same issue every day? But we have to maintain this central focus. Nothing anyone you talk to on the left matters if they accept this level of corruption. If I'm talking to Pisco and Pisco's making very persuasive arguments on why we should increase the amount of legal immigration, I don't give a fuck what he says as long as he is silent or endorses the corruption of the intel agencies, tech agencies, and mainstream media colluding together to censor truthful stories about the unlawful nature of the Bidens before the election because they were putting their thumb on the scale. If they're willing to accept that level of corruption, I don't care what the rest of their issues are. They are not my ally, they are my enemy. It doesn't mean I'm going to cause them physical harm. It doesn't mean that I wish them ill. I'm not even dealing with the people in the chat that no doubt keep making new accounts. They keep going, but the Kushners did things, but Ivanka did things, but Trump had classified documents. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk to those people either. But I'm saying politically they're your enemy. Robbie Starbuck was running for Congress as a Republican. I've actually interviewed Robbie Starbuck on my radio show. He's a great guy. It has nothing to do, I'm not using enemy in the terms that you're saying. I'm saying political enemy. I'm not saying that we should engage in violence or that you shouldn't be able to be friends or be in a relationship with someone. I'm saying that they are your enemy in that until their political side loses, that there isn't a real democracy in this country or a real republic because they are actively cheering for or silent on corruption that steals elections. Also, let me give, I don't like saying the word advice. Let me just tell you, people like Shil Nye, the science guy, and Akril, they're probably feds. I just want to let you know that. And I will be not looking at their message anymore. I recommend you do the same. Anyone that starts saying, but why shouldn't we do violence? Why shouldn't we treat them like this? Are probably feds. Just so you know. I've no doubt that they've infiltrated almost every conservative community online. So don't fall for their bullshit. I'm not even going to respond to those people anymore. They're welcome to stick around and chat, but they're probably feds. To the feds listening, I don't know anyone on the left or the right that has more strongly condemned any sort of political violence whatsoever, universally. Feds. So when I eventually get raided or shut down because I'm accused of inspiring violence of some sort, it couldn't be further from the truth. I argue with people all the time that are probably feds themselves that come on here talking about the need for violence. I'm not just arguing against them because I think that they're feds and I'm afraid to tell what I secretly believe. I deplore violence. I deplore political violence of all sorts. I've done so unanimously. You will not find any information to the contrary in any of the hours upon hours that I've streamed. So, but thanks, Bill Nye, the soy guy, and Akril. Have fun not talking to me. So I just want to let you know, if you're interacting with those people in any way whatsoever, there's a good chance they're feds. And anything you say, no matter how benign, probably a good chance that gets reported to the feds. Just saying. So talk to them at your own risk. That would be Akril and Bill Nye, the science guy or whatever, the soy guy or whatever. I can't see their post anymore, so I don't know. Robbie Starbuck ran as a Republican in the Republican Party. Screwed him over, which I talk of the ills of the Republican Party a lot. But he has this excellent thread on Twitter about the EIP. And so I'm just going to start reading some of it. I will put the link here. He says DHS coordinated with a group called the Election Integrity Partnership to censor Biden's opponents. I'm on the EIP's list with Charlie Kirk, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Don Jr., Jack Posobiec, and more. I was censored while I ran for Congress. Biden's regime paid these groups in the Election Integrity Partnership over $12 million. For all of us, this was a gross violation of our rights and blatantly illegal act by the U.S. government. In my specific case, this was state-sponsored election interference. In this thread, I'll explain who's involved and what they did. They crossed the lines that can't be uncrossed. This is who makes up the EIP, the Stanford Internet Observatory, the University of Washington Center for Informed Public, Atlantic Council's DFR Lab, and analytics from Graphica. Screenshots below show each grant dollars each of them received from the Biden administration. Here's some screenshots. The partners all received federal grants from the Biden administration in the next 2 years. The National Science Foundation was awarded the Stanford and UW projects $3 million in August 2021 to study ways to apply collaborative, rapid response research to mitigate online disinformation. Graphica, also known as Octant Data, received its first listed federal grant several weeks after the 2020 election, nearly $3 million from the Department of Defense for unspecified research on cross-platform detection to counter malign influence. Nearly $2 million followed in fall for 2021 for research on co-citation network mapping, which tracks sources that are cited together. Now, what you'll find interesting is they're only concerned about disinformation. Thank you so much, D. Gulag. 10 Canadian dollars? Thank you. I appreciate it, man. What is the disinformation that they're fighting? Well, information that's critical of the establishment in the Democratic Party. That's what's disinformation to them. It's not the disinformation that Adam Schiff was spreading, that CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post was spreading about Trump being a Russian asset. Not that disinformation. Not the disinformation about the claims of Brett Kavanaugh being a gang rape. Not that. Nope. It's just things that were critical of the Biden administration. Some things that we've been told were disinformation were things like lockdowns would be harmful. Masks didn't do everything they said. There were negative effects that came with the vaccine. Natural immunity was superior to vaccinated immunity. The virus came from a lab in China. Many of these things, it turns out, weren't disinformation and are either likely to be true or absolutely are true. $10 like $1.73 in real money. Yeah, I'm not laughing. I'll take $10.73 anyways. So there's your tax dollars going to pay left-wing organizations to work with the federal government to get people censored online. Robbie Starbuck continues. The simplest way to explain the EIP works is to compare it to something you already know. You know how the CIA and the Department of Defense use contractors to fight battles they don't want to be citing in an official capacity? That's what the EIP is doing, but it's acting as the Ministry of Truth. So what he's saying is, like Blackwater, the mercenary group that the CIA would hire to fight battles in places that the United States military wasn't supposed to be on. That's what they're doing. They're saying, well, technically the First Amendment says we as the government can't directly violate your free speech, but we could pay organizations to do it. That's still illegal. That's still a violation of your First Amendment. Continues. How it works. Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, the DNC, Common Cause, and the NAACP would file tickets with the EIP on posts or people they wanted censored. The EIP did the dirty work of going to big tech. John Solomon breaks it down perfectly. Let's read this article. Feds used private entity to target millions of social posts in 2020. Biden administration gave millions in tax dollars to groups after election, records show. Election Integrity Partnership says it had a 35% success rate in getting tech platforms to label, remove, or restrict content. A consortium of 4 private groups worked with the Departments of Homeland Security and State to censor massive numbers of social media posts they considered misinformation during the 2020 election. And its members then got rewarded millions of federal dollars from the Biden administration afterwards, according to interviews and documents obtained by Just the News. The Election Integrity Partnership is back in action again for the 2022 midterm elections, raising concerns among civil libertarians that a chilling new form of public-private partnership to evade the First Amendment's prohibition of government censorship may be expanding. The consortium is comprised of 4 member organizations: the Stanford Internet Observatory, the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public, the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, and social media analytics firm Graphica. It set up like a concierge-like service in 2020 that allowed federal agencies like Homeland Security Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and State Global Engagement Center to file tickets requesting that online story links and social media posts be censored or flagged by big tech. So you'd see these establishment places like in the Biden administration or at the Department of Homeland Security or etc. that would say, we don't like this story that's critical of the CIA or critical of the FBI or critical of the Biden administration or critical of the FBI or the Department of Justice. So they put the tickets into these organizations that they paid, and then these organizations went to social media and got these posts flagged or removed. 3 liberal groups, the Democratic National Committee, Common Cause, and the NAACP, were also empowered, like the federal agencies, to file tickets seeking censorship of content. Notice it doesn't say Republican groups, conservative groups, but Democrat groups were directly involved in being able to use this facility or to use this plan that used millions of dollars of your tax dollars to censor conservatives. A Homeland-funded collaboration, the Elections Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center, also had success. In its own after-action report on the 2020 election, the consortium boasted it flagged more than 4,800 URLs, shared nearly 22 million times on Twitter alone for social media platforms. Their staff worked 12 to 20-hour shifts from September through November 2020, with monitoring intensifying significantly the week before Election Day. Week before and after Election Day. The tickets sought removal, throttling, and labeling of content that raised questions about mail-in ballot integrity, Arizona's Sharpie Gate, and other election integrity issues of concern. It's weird. Why didn't they flag that it was disinformation, that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian misinformation? Why didn't they flag that? Why didn't they flag any of the litany of stories about Trump being a Russian asset? Why weren't they flagging those? Isn't that odd? The consortium achieved a success rate in 2020 that would be enviable for baseball batters. Platforms took action 35% of flagged URLs, with 21% labeled, 13 removed, and 1% soft blocked, meaning users had to reject a warning to see them. The partnership couldn't determine how many were downranked. So that means 21 were labeled as misinformation when a viewer would read them. 13 were removed completely. And 1% blocked, meaning you had to click a warning to see them. When it says the partnership couldn't determine how many are downranked, that means that how many the algorithm suppressed. So it was actually more successful than the 35% marker. Imagine that. Imagine the federal government using your tax dollars to collaborate with Democrat institutions to censor people on social media who were saying things that they didn't like and having a 35% effective rate. No one on the left gives a shit about this. Well, I can't say that. That's obviously untrue. But the vast majority don't. Continuing. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits Congress from passing any laws that abridge free speech. The courts have ruled that prohibition extends to federal agencies funded by the legislative branch. Participants were acutely aware that the federal agency's role in the effort strayed into uncharted legal territory. For instance, the SIO's Renee DeResta said in a CISA cybersecurity summit video in 2021 that the operation faced quote, unclear legal authorities and, quote, very real First Amendment questions. She joined SIO from a firm exposed by the New York Times for creating a false flag operation against Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore. So this organization, again, the band's back together for 2022, for the midterms 2022, same type shit. One of the people that's in charge of this was one of the ones that created the bullshit smear of Roy Moore, which he's now getting paid millions of dollars. So you could really trust these people. You could trust that they're doing the right thing. They're just interested in getting rid of disinformation. Oh, when they're not spreading the disinformation that they want to get Democrats elected. Mike Benz, an ex-State Department official who was slated to be the department's first ever digital freedom ambassador if Trump had won a second term, discovered much of the consortium's work and research for his new Foundation for Freedom Online, a nonprofit which advocates for free speech globally while monitoring growing U.S. censorship. He told Just the News the consortium was the largest federally sanctioned censorship operation he'd ever seen, a precursor to the now scrapped Disinformation Governance Board, and one that is likely to grow in future elections. Quote, if you trace the chronology, you'll find that there was actually 18 months worth of institutional work to create this very apparatus that we know now played a significant role in censorship of millions of posts before the 2020 election and has ambitious sights for 2022 and 2024. Amazingly, there are now so many Ministry of Truth functionaries within the Department of Homeland Security, he added. There are so many Ministry of Truth tasks, so many Ministry of Truth points of contact, so many different Ministry of Truth policies for whether to remove something, reduce it, slap a fact-checking label on it. Now remember, it's not enough that we have a small amount of corporations that control almost all of our mainstream media. It's not enough that these tech companies are already ran by people overwhelmingly that ideologically support the establishment and the Democratic policies and party. No, they need to go further and spend millions of your tax dollars to make sure that people like you are being censored for information that they don't like. The ideas of the establishment and the Democratic Party are so bad that they can't have a neutral platform. They have to rely on censorship. Because no one would accept these arguments, these ideas, these policies. Sorry, in the name of, helping Ukraine and helping green energy companies that aren't prepared, you're going to have to pay $7 a gallon for gas. Sorry, you're going to have to lose your home. Sorry, while we're going out and eating at the French Laundry restaurant and other fancy places, you're not allowed to go visit your family. So they have to rely on fear-mongering, censorship. I expect powerful authoritarians to do this. But the way they get away with it is because so many people, particularly on the left, support it or ignore it as long as it's perceived to benefiting their side. So many people that said Trump was a fascist for kicking Jim Acosta out of a press briefing have no problem with our intel agencies falsely labeling the Hunter Biden story Russian disinformation. Tech companies censoring it. Media companies claiming they wouldn't cover it because it was untrue. They have no problem with tax dollars going to finance left-wing organizations that are flagging posts as misinformation, but it's all one-sided. No problem with it. Let's keep going. Representative Andrew Clyde, a member of the House Homeland Security Committee, called the revelation stunning and said the 2020 operation amounted to the federal government sanctioning and outsourcing censorship. Quote, the government knows that they cannot do it themselves because of the First Amendment to the Constitution, which prohibits it, Clyde told Just the News. And then they decide to partner with another entity, a private entity, a social media platform or university. And they say, hey, we're going to feed you information that we think is disinformation, or we want you to be disinformation, or we want to be disinformation. And then you go ahead and you do the deplatforming. You label it as misinformation or disinformation. Clyde said he expects Republicans to investigate the consortium next year if they gain control of Congress, and that he's drafting legislation called the Free Speech Defense Act to address the censorship issues. The bill would prevent the federal government from labeling anything through a proxy entity like a social media company as disinformation, labeling it misinformation, or labeling it as true. And then it would give an opportunity for those people who have been injured to take legal action. Homeland Security, CISA, EIP, and the Stanford and UW projects did not immediately respond to requests. It wasn't just blogs and individual social media users whose content was targeted for removal and throttling as repeat spreaders of misinformation. News and opinion organizations, including the New York Post, Fox News, Just the News, and SeanHannity.com, were also targeted. The partnership's members published a 292 public report in March 2021. Though the most recent version is dated June 15th, 2021, alleged webinar featured former CISA Director Christopher Krebs, who led the effort to secure electoral infrastructure and support response to mis- and disinformation during the election period. I think we were pretty effective in getting platforms to act on things they haven't acted on before, it said, both by pressuring them to adopt specific censorship policies and then reporting violations. SIO founder and former Facebook's chief security officer Alex Stamos told the launch webinar. Platform interventions in response to delegitimization of election results, for example, went from uniformly non-comprehensive in August 2020 to comprehensive by Election Day, the report says. The partnership has not drawn widespread attention, however. Congressional testimony has approvingly cited the report, which is also filed as evidence in a lawsuit against a Massachusetts official for allegedly deplatforming a Twitter user. Ben's Foundation for Freedom Online brought news security to the partnership in August and shared its own summary of the report with Just the News, with links to the primary documents and the background on CISA and its private partners. FFO spent 16 weeks mapping virtually every element of the DHS partnership and operations connected to internet censorship, including the partnership's report, Benz wrote, pledging to dribble out revelations from FFO's research in the several months. It's already published assorted video evidence. DHS Ministry of Truth has evaded public attention for so long because it acts like a coordinator of censorship network, rather than the implementer of specific censorship actions, similar to how the CIA and Pentagon outsource wars to private military contractors. SIO officially launched the partnership 100 days before the election. Quote, in consultation with CISA and other stakeholders, the partnership report says. It attributes the idea to SIO-funded interns at CISA, noting that the censorship by the agency and domestic social media monitoring by intelligence agencies would likely be illegal. So they knew that it was illegal, so they basically hid it. Quote, this limited federal role reveals a critical gap for non-governmental entities to fill, the executive summary states. Increasingly pervasive mis- and disinformation, both foreign and domestic, creates the urgent need for collaboration across government, civil society, media, and social media platforms. The partnership said it limited itself to flagging social media content intended to suppress voting, reduce participation, confuse voters as to election processes, or delegitimize election results without evidence, the latter cited in 72% of the tickets. That's funny. Do you think that they flagged anything as disinformation about the 2016 election being stolen by Russians and Trump? I bet they didn't. It wasn't enough to be provably false, however. Simply exaggerating the impact of factual information was enough to be reported. The flagged content most likely to draw action by tech platforms was misleading statistics. A graphic on cross-platform participatory misinformation suggests the purpose was to stop content from reaching a virality threshold, which could lead to in real-life actions, protests, legal action, and mainstream coverage. During the launch webinar, the Atlantic Council's Emerson Brookings said they wanted to stop the amplification and legitimation of far-right influencers, who would be doing all they could to catch the eye of Fox News producers, making it likely that President Trump, the social media Death Star, would see their content. So they're admitting, the people that were getting government money, that this was to make sure that Fox and other places wouldn't report on things that they thought would harm the Democrats and help Trump. Government entities were involved in real-time chats with partnership and social media platforms over specific content under review. A chat screenshot in the report shows an unidentified government partner rejecting the SharpieGate claim as that Sharpies aren't read at all by ballot counting machines, and a platform provider responding that it was now reviewing those claims. The partners all received federal grants from the Biden administration in the next 2 years. Good. Biden paid them handsomely for their election interference. The National Science Foundation awarded the Stanford and UW projects $3 million in August 2021. UW's press release about the award noted their earlier work and partnership and praise for the report ex-CISA Director Krebs, who called it the seminal report on what happened in 2020, not just the election, but also through January 6th. Graphica, we already talked about this, the Atlantic Council, which hosted Vice President Biden for a keynote address as its 2011 winner, has received $4.7 million in grants since 2021, all but one from the State Department. This far exceeds the think tank's federal haul in previous years, which hadn't approached $1 million in a single year since 2011. These figures don't include the federal contracts each partnership member. Graphica Octakit, for example, received nearly $100,000 for its 2021 for its contagion monitor surveillance and services used to advance network science and to analyze PRC influence, China influence. Really? I wonder if they are announcing the influence of China on the Biden family. UW's project SIO and Graphica also collaborated with the Virility Project, which tracks and analyzes purported COVID-19 vaccine misinformation and social media narratives related to vaccine hesitancy. The government consultation on censorship stands in stark contrast to recent media coverage of SIO and Graphica. The Washington Post said in August, report by the two organizations exposed years of covert campaigns to promote American interest abroad by fake social media accounts, which Facebook and Twitter are repeatedly taking down for alleged U.S. military ties. The Pentagon is reportedly auditing its internet information operation in response. Graphica and its cadre of former U.S. intelligence agencies was the subject of critical profile in February by the Washington Standard, which dubbed it the deep state's beard for controlling the information age. The report also noted that Graphica's work on election partnership with the other organization and that the SIO's founder Stamos is an advisor to NATO's Collective Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. The Department of Homeland Security, CISA Election Integrity Partnership, and its two leaders at Stanford Observatory and UW Center for Informed Public didn't respond to queries. Oh, someone accusing me of being a Fed. I don't give a shit. It's one of the things when it comes with the nature of this, you can't prove who a Fed is or not. I'm telling you right now, anyone that's saying, so when should we do violence? When do you think violence will be okay? I'm just saying that you could choose to respond to that if you want, but just know that person's most likely a Fed. They're trying to get you in trouble. That's what they're doing. Just saying. They could say, nuh-uh, Rob's a Fed. Whatever. I'm using my public name. My information's been publicly available. You can see where it's at. Make the judgment for yourself. There's nothing I can do to say any more on it. Stupid. If the Trump administration had done this going into the 2020 election, if we found out the Trump administration was paying Breitbart and braying conservatives to have a 35% success rate at flagging or removing left-wing posts that they consider disinformation, what do you think the media would say? What do you think the Democrats would say? It's true, Aftershock. They would say, that's fascism, that's corruption, that's a violation of the First Amendment. But when it's the other way, remember when I got a community strike from YouTube from discussing a Time magazine article, remember? Remember that? Remember this article? The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. Time magazine. Weird thing happened right after November 3rd election. Nothing. The nation braced for chaos. Liberal groups had vowed to take to the streets, planning hundreds of protests across the country. Right-wing militias were girding for battle. In a poll before Election Day, 75% of Americans voiced concern about violence. Instead, an eerie quiet descended. As President Trump refused to concede, the response was not mass action, but crickets. When media organizations called the race for Joe Biden November 7th, jubilation broke out instead, as people thronged cities in the U.S. to celebrate the democratic process that resulted in Trump's disaster. Right. If the Democrats would have won, people would have taken it to the streets and rioted like they had in the past. But when it seemed as if Democrats won, or if they would have lost, that's what they would have done. When it seemed as if Democrats won, yeah, Republicans didn't do that. A second odd thing happened amid Trump's attempts to reverse the results. Corporate America turned on him. Hundreds of major business leaders, many of them who had backed Trump's candidacy and supported his policy, called on him to concede. The president, something felt amiss. It was all very, very strange, Trump said. Within days of the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint the winner, even while many key states were still being counted. In a way, Trump was right. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protest and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. The pact was formalized in a terse, little-noticed joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO published on Election Day. Both sides would come to see it as a sort of implicit bargain, inspired by the summer's massive, sometimes destructive racial justice protest, in which the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy. What a great sentence. Business leaders decided they were inspired by the violence, and so they decided to oppose Trump. I guess the violence worked for the left. The handshake between the business and labor was just one component of a vast cross-partisan campaign to protect the election, an extraordinary shadow effort dedicated not to winning the vote, but ensuring it would be free, fair, credible, and uncorrupted. For more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and autocratically inclined president. Though much of this activity took place on the left, it was separate from the Biden campaign and crossed ideological lines, with crucial contributions by nonpartisan and conservative actors. The scenario the shadow campaigners were desperate to stop was not a Trump victory. It was an election so calamitous that no result could be discerned at all, a failure of the central act of democratic governance. This work touched every aspect of the election. They got the states to change their voting systems and law and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding, suckerbucks, to make sure that the Democrats could go ahead and vote the way they wanted. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits. Oh, by the way, that one in Georgia that we were just told was Jim Eagle, it won in court with an Obama-era judge. Turns out that wasn't voter suppression. There was record turnout after that law had been passed. They recruited armies of poll workers. That's strange. And got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and use data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. Geez, that sounds like the article we just read. That tax dollars were going to these sorts of businesses to pressure social media to censor what they call disinformation. Here's Time Magazine admitting it in 2021. They executed a national public awareness campaign that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over the days. See? They needed Americans to understand that, voting would stop in the middle of the night and things like that, preventing Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory from getting more traction. After Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. The untold story of the election is that thousands of people in both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy. That's why participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. Quote, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And for reporting on this in the past, I received a community strike from YouTube. Now we know. That was, so YouTube said you can't talk about that. Quoting the Time magazine, quoting them is itself disinformation. Now we have official documents that show, now we know the U.S. government was paying institutions, left-wing institutions, to censor. But they don't call it rigging, they call it fortifying. You see? See how that works? Oh, okay, as long as it's just fortifying the election, no problem then, right? Let's go back to Robbie Starbuck's tweets. This is how easy they made it. The DHS, the DNC, and others just filed a ticket with the EIP, who then acted as their messenger to demand big tech take action on the post or people flagged by the United States government, or the DNC and their report shows big tech delivered it for them. The IP created what's been called an enemies list of a select group they branded as misinformation in need of censorship. I was one of them and have the distinction of being the only one who was running for Congress while the EIP worked to censor us. Here's from this very institution that was working with Democrat organizations, receiving tax dollars to push social media to censor. Here's their list of their top 20 enemies. James Wood, Gateway Pundit, Don Jr., Donald Trump, Tom Fitton, Jack Posobiec, Cat Turd, Eric Trump, Chuck Colesto, Charlie Kirk, Mark Levin, CJ Truth, James O'Keefe, Praying Medic, Rick Grinnell, PNJ Abbin, Breitbart, The Right Melissa, Mike Roman, Robbie Starbuck, and Sean Hannity. Are they left or right? Look at that. What a coincidence. They're all right-wingers. All right-wingers. Isn't that interesting? Now, what the left will say is like, they're the only ones that were denying elections. Really? I won't be able to find Stacey Abrams, for example, saying that elections were stolen? Perfectly fine, right? People actually running for Congress like Robbie Starbuck. Government tax scholars going to censor them. Why not? They took away Trump's channel. Some context, I announced my run for Congress in November of 2020. The EIP operation lasted through 2021. That means they worked to censor and malign a congressional candidate on behalf of the U.S. government and the Democratic Party. Sadly, they were successful. During the course of EIP's communication with big tech, my accounts on IG and Twitter, I guess that's Instagram and Twitter, were put on a search ban, which means to this day, and thousands wrote that Twitter made their accounts unfollow me. This was clear election interference and an in-kind donation to my opponents. Here's another great John Solomon piece that breaks down this in even more detail. They didn't just do it to me, they did it to Marjorie Taylor Greene and other enemies of the Biden regime. The damages for all of us and for our country are incalculable. This thread is already getting long, but if anyone really wants to get their wheels turning, look up each of the 4 groups that make up the IP, and you'll find ties to characters like George Soros. Soros, for example, is a donor to the Atlantic Council. Remember, this coordination, the grant money, the enemies list, the election interference, and the people involved is what we know before discovery in any lawsuits. Imagine the facts afterwards. Speaking of discovery, you know who else was on the list? My lawyer, PNJ Abbin. Or is it PN Jabin? My family came from Cuba, where Marxists have enemies lists to target and silence opponents they fear most. Economic ruin, a committee that removes candidates from ballots, fraudulent elections, and total control of the media, academia, and culture. Sound familiar? This is the road to hell we're on forever if we don't stand up together to this modern-day communist regime masquerading as Democrats. The government crossed an unprecedented line by coordinating to censor Americans, to interfere in an election to keep me out of Congress. Every move they made to stop me and others on the list was an attack on you, your vote, our values as a nation. I haven't yet begun to fight these communists, and I suspect I'm not alone. These communists can delay the inevitable, but it's still inevitable. The people will win. This operation is still going on today. The U.S. government is collaborating to censor the enemies of the regime in power, and they're rewarding the entities that do the dirty work with big grant money. This is worse than Watergate, and it's not even close. Absolutely. And it's certainly worse than anything Russia was accused of doing by posting on Pokemon Go and Facebook. They don't give a shit. They don't give it. Have you heard one left-wing commentator that talked about Trump's fascism? Have you heard one of them speak up? One Twitch streamer, one left-wing YouTuber. You heard one panel talking about it? Anyone? They're perfectly fine with it. Just like when channels get banned. Oh, well, Rob gets taken down. His Discord gets removed. Oh, well, his YouTube, or he has to remove his own Discord because of mass reporting. Oh, well, he has to stop posting on YouTube for 3 months because of it and almost loses his YouTube channel. Oh, well. But boy, oh, boy, when one of those lefties lose their channel, oh, it's such a big deal. Same thing here. You'll hear them wailing and gnashing their teeth if Trump gets into office and he says, cool, I'll use this very same organization to now target disinformation. It'll be all left-wingers. Anytime someone says something critical of Trump, we'll target it for removal using your tax dollars. I don't have to tell you, they would lose their mind. They would say this is proof of fascism. He needs to be impeached immediately. That's why they're freaking out about Elon Musk perhaps buying Twitter. They rely on this sort of censorship. Remember, again, so we talked about Tony Bobulinski and the FBI covering up for the crimes of the Biden family, and then pressuring social media to censor people even talking about the crimes. So imagine that. You get no justice because the law enforcement agency tasked with investigating the crimes is corrupt and covering up the crimes. And then they make sure that, okay, well, if we can't get justice, we can all talk about how corrupt it is. No, you can't. We'll censor that too. You can't even talk about it. At least on the platforms where it gets the most reach. And as Tony Bobulinski said, we're talking about an election effectively decided by 45,000 votes. You don't think that this could have swung that many? Now think of all the things you hear about. Oh, if there was election fraud, we would have found it. Oh, everyone agrees. There's a consensus on all these things of COVID. Yeah, no shit, when the government's financing to censor people that have differing opinions. Censor people that disagree with you and then use the proof that you don't see many people disagreeing with you to prove that you must be right. What a racket. There's a consensus. Now they want to do it with gender affirming care and with surgeries on children. They said it wasn't happening. Then when you showed it was happening, they said you shouldn't be allowed to say that because you're inspiring violence. Meanwhile, conservative after conservative is being attacked, churches being firebombed, arson, vandalized, pregnancy centers, pro-life pregnancy centers, kid being ran over. The guy who ran him over said it was because he's extremist. Pro-life activists being shot. An old woman was shot the other day. Republican centers being vandalized. Brett Kavanaugh, death threat. Didn't hear about stochastic terrorism to the Biden speech labeling half the country terrorists that didn't vote for him. Didn't hear much of that. Isn't that very convenient the way they do that? It's always been that way. When Chuck Schumer says Kavanaugh will reap the whirlwind, and then there's an assassination attempt on him, no one says, "Oh, Kavanaugh, that was stochastic terrorism." Schumer, no one says that. When AOC says we need to keep the people in the streets when there's riots going on daily. When Maxine Waters says we need more of the same when there are riots going on because of the Derek Chauvin trial. No one says stochastic terrorism. But oh boy, if you accurately report on what certain hospitals are doing, you can't do that. They're saying that you should be treated as a terrorist. And they'll do it too. Just like they did with parents that were angry at school board meetings. The FBI got involved in that as well. Oh yeah, the letter said we have to use the Patriot Act to treat these people as domestic terrorists. And they did it. Ooh, that'd be cool if you were the real Douglas Murray. But thank you, Doug Murray. I'm a big, big fan of the real Douglas Murray. And if you're so stupid and you're on the left, let's say you're on the left and you're like, great, I don't want these hospitals that are performing trans surgeries to be outed. I don't want people that talked about possible problems with COVID in the election to say what they want. I'm glad that was censored. Just know this. If you are okay with this now, inevitably, the government's going to do something you don't like. And when you protest, when you say, no, that's not right, and let me tell you why, they'll just say, no, you can't. We'll censor you. And then what will you say? Well, that's not right. Too late. This is the authority you wanted to give them. That's what free speech is about. It's easy to say, I think people that agree with me should be allowed to speak. But free speech and protecting it's about saying, I think people that disagree with me should be allowed to speak. I think even people that are saying shit that I really despise should be allowed to speak. But our government's using money to censor people that are critical of the establishment institutions. And then they're publicly bragging about it, like in that Time magazine article. We didn't rig the election, we fortified it. Let's take something like election. I have no proof definitively that voting machine swayed votes or ballot harvesting. There are significant questions that should be allowed to be talked about. There are ongoing lawsuits. For example, in Pennsylvania, they ruled that it was against the Pennsylvania Constitution to allow mail-in voting the way it happened. Similar hearings are going on in Wisconsin. There's a case we'll talk about in a minute from California that's interesting. But I could say none of that's risen to the level of proving that the election was stolen. I could say that. You are Douglas Murray. Shoot me an email. It's rob.noer@gmail.com. Love to talk to you someday. What if they're wrong about just one of them? What if we find out 5 years from now, turns out that, yeah, there was shenanigans in Maricopa County. It did swing the election in Arizona. Then what? What did you do? What did the people that cheered for this censorship do? Too late then, right? That's what they'll say. Oh, well, it's in the past. Don't worry about it. Now trust us now when we say we know what's disinformation and you have to listen to us and censor. That's what they'll say. Oh, well. It's the same with COVID. What if you're wrong? What if you said that you can't allow people to say this because it's dangerous, and then it turns out they were right? Then what? Oh, well? I have watched 2,000 Mules. I don't think it definitively proves that the election was stolen. I think that it raises significant questions. There's no doubt there was fraud. The question is, does it rise? There's fraud in every election. It seems convincing that there was a lot of evidence of fraud that they showed. But is it smoking gun proof? No, it's not. That's the hubris. Now listen, the same people that lied to you about the Iraq war, they're the ones running the show. They're still doing it. It's the same people, same institutions. You think they're all truthful now? We should give them the authority to determine what's a lie and what's disinformation, what's the truth, and allow them to censor what they consider disinformation? That's what you think? You don't see how that could run amok? Even if I can only plead to this of the left, if you give the government this power, inevitably, it will be used for corrupt purposes, even if you don't believe it's being used now, which it is. But even if you don't believe it because you're shallow-sighted and you're just like, well, it's helping my side, so I'm okay with it. It will eventually. It is inevitable. If you allow this sort of corruption and control of speech to occur, that it will inevitably be used for self-serving reasons, even if you don't believe it is now. Why would you be okay with it? Imagine that Trump had the ability to use this. Would you be okay with it? Yeah, I'd say it's most likely that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream. That's the most likely scenario. The least likely scenario is that Russia did it. Mama Goo, thank you so much. I guess it's possible that a NATO ally blew it up, but I'm assuming the United States knew. Lie after lie after lie we've been told by our media, by our federal government, by these institutions, these agencies. But now we have to trust them. They know it's misinformation, and we just have to trust them. No, if there's fraud in every election, it doesn't make every election fraudulent or bogus. The fraud would have to rise to the level of being significant. For example, you could have an election where 1 million people vote and one person could have committed fraud. That doesn't mean the election's bogus. What's the point of committing fraud if it doesn't change the result? Well, you wouldn't know if it would change the result. Right? Let's say you're one person who harvested 1,000 ballots, right? You could harvest those ballots fraudulently or illegally, hypothetically. I'm not saying this occurred, but you could hypothetically commit fraud to 1,000 ballots and your candidate could still lose by 10,000 ballots. So that was fraud that didn't affect the outcome. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be punished. It absolutely should. But it still wouldn't have risen to the level of affecting the outcome. Well, this is the issue, D-Weezy. All they have to do is prove significant fraud. That's all they have to prove, right? Because the establishment's gone all in, not saying, yes, an amount of fraud occurred, but we don't think it was widespread enough to change the election, right? They said it's the most secure election ever. That's what they said. And they've used that line to censor people that have disagreed with them. YouTube will do it right now. I'll probably get a strike for this video. Did I say that there was definitive proof that the election was stolen? No. I didn't say anything of the nature, at least referring to through ballot harvesting or switching votes, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't say that. I said it could be. There's evidence that warrants looking into, but I don't see definitive smoking gun proof. But that's not what we have to prove. Even if there was fraud that didn't rise to the level of switching any state, For the security of this past election, for the confidence of the American people to trust that elections are secure, and for the security of elections going forward, we absolutely should have a robust conversation about it and should be looking with a fine-tooth comb all of these things. And so if we find any evidence of any amount of substantial fraud, and by substantial I mean this. Substantial is a weird word, right? How do you define substantial? By substantial I mean thousands, tens of thousands. If we find proof that that occurred, then how monstrous is it that we censored people seeking to talk about that? Let me show you another story. Here's the New York Times Monday. How a tiny elections company became a conspiracy theory target. This is the New York Times. Election deniers catapulted a Michigan firm with just 21 U.S. employees to the center of unfounded voter fraud claims, exposing it to vicious threats. That's New York Times Monday. Let's see what it says. This is by Stuart Thompson, October 3rd. That's Monday. At an invitation-only conference in August at a secret location southeast of Phoenix, a group of election deniers unspooled a new conspiracy theory about the 2020 presidential outcome. Using threadbare evidence, or none at all, the group suggested that a small American election software company, Konnech, had secret ties to the Communist Chinese Party and had given the Chinese government backdoor access to personal data about 2 million poll workers in the United States, according to online accounts from several people. Well, thank you so much, New York Times and Stuart Thompson. That's amazing. Thank you for calling out this disinformation. This surely is the same sort of disinformation that the federal government would be paying these left-wing groups to then ask social media companies to censor. Thank God the New York Times and Stuart Thompson are there. Thank God. Because we can't have this clearly. And Monday they laid it out. Thank you, New York Times, for laying it out. These election deniers with their crazy conspiracy theory, they shouldn't be allowed to say this shit. It's dangerous to the country. Thank God. Oh, what's this? New York Times on Tuesday, the day after. Election software executive arrested on suspicion of theft. The executive, Eugene Yu, and his firm Konnech have been focus of attention amongst election deniers. Look at that. It's Stuart Thompson again. 24 hours later, after he maligned election deniers of having no evidence that this company, Konnech, was engaged in any sort of fraudulent activity regarding the election, 24 hours later, after writing that bombshell piece, he begrudgingly writes election software executive arrested on suspicion of theft. Same author 1 day later. Let's see what he says. The top executive of an elections technology company that has been the focus of attention among election deniers was arrested by Los Angeles County officials in connection with an investigation into the possible theft of personal information about poll workers. Eugene Yu, the founder and chief executive of Konnech, the technology company, was taken into custody on suspicion of theft, a Los Angeles County District Attorney Gascon said in a statement. Konnech, which is based in Michigan, develops software to manage election logistics, like scheduling poll workers. Los Angeles County is among its customers. The company has been accused by groups challenging the validity of the 2020 election with storing information about poll workers on servers in China. The company has repeatedly denied keeping data outside the United States, including in statements to the New York Times. Gascon's office said its investigators found data stored in China. Holding the data there would violate Konnech's contact with... Wait a minute, didn't this same guy for the New York Times tell us the day before that it was a crazy conspiracy that election deniers had threadbare evidence or none at all, that this person was targeting poll workers and storing that data in our enemy China, this country? It was threadbare, right, Hurricane? Threadbare. I thought that was a good one. And then a day later... Oh, it turns out they were right. Those damn election deniers, they were right this time. Now, does that mean that the election deniers, which what a bullshit way to phrase it. I wonder if that's what he calls Democrats that refused to accept the 2016 election. Is that what he calls Stacey Abrams? Is she an election denier? Now, if the Biden administration had it their way, and we advance further, that story would have never broken. Why? Because the public would have not been allowed to talk about it. These election deniers would have been censored, and it turns out they were right. Whoops. Oh, boy. Oh, well, our bad. Just like with the Hunter Biden laptop story. Oh, well. Now, maybe you could live with it if it was equally applied on both sides. I would still be against it. But if they were censoring people that were saying Donald Trump is a stooge of Vladimir Putin, he colluded with Putin to steal the 2016 election, if they're censoring Stacey Abrams saying that the election was stolen from her in 2018, if they're censoring Howard Dean and Jimmy Carter saying the 2000 election was stolen, okay, I'd still disagree with it. I would. But it's like, well, at least they're being even-handed. Oh, yeah, Doug Murray. The Los Angeles District Attorney will bury the case. Don't worry. What most likely happened here, it seems really embarrassing, but why would Stuart Thomas report that Monday? He had no idea that this was about to occur. No, what happened was the FBI that was probably covering up for this person who was selling poll data to China probably tipped off the New York Times. And oftentimes what you see is these propagandist mainstream outlets, they'll get in front of stories because they're just mouthpieces for the establishment and for places like the FBI. So the FBI reliably knows that they're mouthpieces, and they'll spin a story before it comes out. That way it looks like, well, this isn't a big deal. The New York Times already spoke of this. So that's what's going on, in my estimation. That's why they broke this story Monday. If not, if he literally broke this story Monday and then had no clue that the following day that the guy was about to be arrested, that is even more embarrassing. But they don't give a shit. The left doesn't. They don't care that this is happening. They don't care at all. Well, it's not a big deal. So what? They're private company. They're allowed to do that. Disinformation was bad. That's the stuff you'll hear. What about Trump? What about Ivanka getting a licensing deal? That's the stuff you'll hear. Well, they have prosecutorial discretion. The FBI, that's what Pisco will be saying. Vaush will be saying, well, there's genocide against trans people. That's what he'll be saying. So this is all okay. Destiny will be saying, what happened with Ms. Kiff and Keffels? That's what he'll be saying. And the dumber lefties won't comment on it at all. But boy, oh boy, if it happens the opposite way, boy, there'll be gnashing of the teeth. Oh my God, did you see what Republicans did? Using tax dollars to censor left-wingers? Some of the things they were censoring were true stories right before the election? No, they're too busy discussing drama and trying to inch us closer to World War III. New York Times reporting today, U.S. believes Ukrainians were behind the assassination of Daria Dugina. Isn't it nice we're sending billions of dollars to a country that's performing assassinations? Now, you were told you were a crazy conspiracy theorist if you thought Ukraine was behind that. Just like you're a dangerous conspiracy theorist if you think the United States was involved in the destruction of Nord Stream 2. I'm just reading some of the things I saved on Twitter. This is a great post by Vince Legman. He says, never forget that Bill Barr was the attorney general when Tony Bobulinski was interviewed by the corrupt FBI who covered it up and helped Biden in the 2020 election. Still to this day, I talk to Republicans. Like, remember when I talked to Half-Baked Takes, who calls himself a centrist conservative? And I talked about disbanding the FBI, and he's like, you're nuts. Literally, the FBI is targeting conservatives. covering up for crimes of establishment people like Democrats. You're nuts. It's just a few bad apples. Well, I understand, Turn, they don't care about being hypocritical. I get that. I'm making the point to people that aren't necessarily completely on my side right now that this is, everybody understands this is a big deal. Everyone understands it. Because if you're independent right now, again, I use my neighbor a lot. What do I tell my neighbor that's a farmer that's like, dude, I can't go visit my family because of COVID lockdowns. My kids couldn't go to school. My wife couldn't go to her job because it was considered non-essential. And I'm like, corrupt FBI. He's like, dude, I just want to go to work. I just want to pay my mortgage. How do I explain to them how this is a precursor to that shit happening? One of the ways I explain it is because it sounds confusing. It's like, well, disinformation sounds bad. Maybe we should. So one of the ways you could explain it to him is like, look, all you need to know is this. If this happened the other way, everyone in a position of power would lose their fucking mind. Yeah, $5 gas, right. And it's hard. And I'm not saying, oh, my neighbor's stupid. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying my neighbor probably has his priorities more in order than me. He's a very busy man. He has a very important job. He's taking care of multiple children and his wife. He doesn't have the time or the demeanor to sit down and go through stuff like I do. He doesn't find it entertaining like I do. So the average person, why does this matter? So what? Hunter Biden, money, China, whatever. He's a cool guy. People around here are pretty cool. Most people just want to be left. That's the radical lefties. That's one of their great sources of strength. They know most people just want to be left alone. I'm wearing a pirate hat right now. The Pittsburgh Pirates are a team in the Major League Baseball organization. Major League Baseball in 2020 moved their All-Star game out of the city of Atlanta because Georgia passed an eminently reasonable voting law to try to stop corruption, intimidation, bribery, amongst other things. Democrats said that was racist. Major League Baseball went along with them, pulled the game out of Atlanta, and now a court ran by an Obama-appointed judge said not only was it not racist, it actually resulted in record turnout, including with African Americans. Here I am wearing a Major League Baseball hat. Now, I don't watch professional sports near the level that I used to. I don't. All of them have become garbage. It is a weakness. It is almost a vice of mine. But I don't like to just sit around and think about politics 24/7. I like having some entertainment in my life. I like having some time when I could just watch some mindless bullshit, whether it be a movie, a TV show, a sporting event, a video game. I like that. I'm frustrated that constantly I'm being indoctrinated even in those things. But even I, who knows, here I am wearing the hat. Now, I did get this hat for free at the game like a couple years ago. You can tell it's a little dirty. They know that. The radical left knows that. The establishment knows that. They're not taking days off. Their entertainment is constant authoritarianism and attacking you. That's what it is. They want to control every aspect of your life. So it goes back to that Jordan Peterson quote that I've played many times. How do we get here? Well, because you just want to be left alone, and they're like, no, we're going to encroach. And then finally they encroach just a step too far, and finally we say, enough's enough. And they say, okay. And they back up just a little. Then they encroach a little. Now they go a little further this time. We take, you go back up. And eventually they encroach to places 10 years ago we would have said, we'll never let it get that bad, but here we are. And it's because we don't fight back like that. What's up, Pete? How you doing, man? Keffels is mass flagging Rakita Law, trying to get his channel removed, trying to get his license to practice law removed. And why? Because how dare he report on what medical clinics are actually doing with their gender affirming care? How dare he? How dare he? That's their entertainment. They're all in. They will move on to the next person to get them censored. They'll even do it to lefties they don't like Destiny. It's all or nothing for them. They know that you just want to be left alone, and that's how they get away with it. They keep pushing and pushing and pushing. 99% of people think they're horrible people, that what they're doing is reprehensible, but no one speaks up. Because if you speak up, they'll target you and everyone else will be quiet. So you just keep your mouth shut, and they keep going after one person after another until eventually there'll be a breaking point. They'll start to eat themselves. Check out Corn Pops Revenge. So when I'm talking about corruption at the FBI and corruption with our media institutes and corruption with, institutions that are working with social media to censor people, that's a tough sell to someone that's just like, I just want to pay my fucking bills and have enough money left over to take my kids on vacation this year. That's it. That's what I want. I just want to go visit my mom. I want to have a wedding for my daughter. I want to have a funeral for my grandfather. That's the average person political motivation where I live. Now, more and more people are getting politically involved because they understand if you don't stand up now, the lockdowns next time will be worse. The intrusions on your rights next time will be worse. Yeah, we talked about Rakita's channel, Doug. It's crazy. So how do you explain to them how horrible this corruption is? They don't care. Like, if you start telling them, like, well, let me tell you about, Whitewater. Let me tell you about the Clinton scandal. Like, they don't give a shit. It's whatever. I just don't want gas to be $5 a gallon. I want to be able to go to work and be left fucking alone. So you have to find things that fire them up. This is what they're teaching your kids at school. That fires them up. While they told you were non-essential, this is what they were doing. That fires them up. But you also need to be able to explain how this corruption influences and allows all of those other things to occur. And it's not immediately obvious. Most of these people, I'm just going to put their hat on for a minute, right? And assume I'm them. This is what most of the people would say. I assume that pretty much everyone in politics is corrupt. So yeah, corruption's happening all the time everywhere in Washington. I just want to be left alone. So when you're like, look at this corruption, the FBI targeting, or covering up for the crimes of Hunter Biden, they're like, yeah, whatever. Probably all these politician kids are doing shady shit and the FBI and the CIA is covering up for it. So you need to really explain, like, this is why this is uniquely worse. So when people say, well, pointing out the hypocrisy, the left doesn't care. I agree, they don't. Some of them you could reach to be like, not an appeal to hypocrisy, but an appeal to like, you can't see the writing on the wall, how this will be used against you. They don't give a shit about that. They're fine with the hypocrisy as long as it benefits them. But maybe you could appeal to some self-preservation saying like, look, you realize this is going to target you eventually. Maybe you could appeal to a fraction of them that way. Maybe there's a handful of there are people on the left that hate my political ideology and hate Donald Trump or hate Rand Paul or, other Ron DeSantis or people, but they're reasonable people. They're not hypocrites. They find the corruption of these institutions despicable. People like Jimmy Dore or Matt Taibbi or Glenn Greenwald or Aaron Mattei or streamers like Jackson Hinkle or Hawes. They're not selling out. And I massively disagree with all of those people on a lot of political issues. But they're not selling out their integrity and cheering for corruption just so their side could win. YouTube will say, my prediction with Rakita's channel is YouTube will say, we mistakenly deleted it. They got mass reported, so YouTube probably just acted because there was a mass report, and then they'll investigate and it'll be down for a while, and they'll probably say, okay. Just like all of these places do. The mistake never goes the other way. But again, Keffel's community's out there celebrating like they did this. So Keffel's is an important figure because Keffel's is a very non-extraordinary person. Keffel's is not an intelligent person, is not a moral person, is not someone that stands out for any ideology or action that's been taken that sets her apart. Keffel's, did you ever watch The Big Lebowski? I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And at the beginning, when the stranger's sort of narrating, he says, it was right around the time of our conflict with Saddam and the Iraqis. I only mention it because sometimes there's a man who just fits right in for his time. And that was the dude in Los Angeles. That's Keffel's now. Take one of the most unextraordinary, vindictive, shitty people you could imagine. Allow them to claim victimhood by weaponizing their identity politics. Have everyone pretend they're impressive just because of how they identify. And allow them to wreak havoc and be the bully that they were always born to be. In any other time, in any other society, people would have looked at Keffel's like, what are you, fucking lunatic? Get out of here. What an idiot. And not just because they're trans. Because they're unremarkable. They're petty. But now someone with actual talent and intelligence like Rakita Law, the society we live in, says that Keffel's could shut that down. That's why. I don't know that her crowd did it or whatever, but all right. It's 11:20. Just a couple notes and then we'll end for tonight. Yeah, that's right, peer review. Look, I get let me, and I know I say this a lot, but let me just rehash for people to know. I stream primarily for one reason. Because it is entertaining to me. This is not my career. I find it cathartic. I like talking about politics. I like talking about culture. I used to do it to local people at the bar if I was out at the bar, or to my friends, or to my wife. Most of them don't want to hear this shit. So I started doing small form videos, and then I like live streams even more, so I started doing it. When it becomes not fun for me, I'll stop. I do make small amounts of money. I make enough money to basically put back into the channel, and I'll be honest, sometimes I get some extra spending money, but I have put, I had to buy new computers, and I need a new computer again. This one I got shit. It was $600. That's all I could afford. You know, cameras and microphones and stuff like that, and subscriptions to Restream, and, you know, I got PowerPoint and Microsoft Word and stuff like that helps me with stuff, you know. Well, you could check it out on comfy.stream. Oh, actually, I don't know if Comfy's working yet. You could check it out on Twitter or Twitch. You could catch the review of the Tango, but yeah, sorry you missed it live. But that's why I do this. I have a life outside of this. And I know people are I swear to you, some of my best friends I met when I went to Clarion University as a debater, and they're super left wing, and we're still great friends. We don't talk about politics much, somewhat, but I'm very good. I'm a facilitator, right? I could go into a group of 50 left wingers, and I could say things that are true, but are said in a way that's palpable to them, right? For example, I was around some of my college friends the other day, and they were talking about the Fetterman versus Dr. Oz race. I strategically didn't say how bad I think Fetterman is, but I was honest about some of my criticisms of Oz. Now, they know I'm voting for Oz, but I was like, yeah, this is what he's done that's dumb. And one of my friends reciprocates like, yeah, here's what Fetterman did that was stupid. But we understand that we might disagree with each other, but it's not worth losing the friendship, and we know how to talk in a way that we're not being disingenuous. I'm not lying about what I'm saying, but I'm selecting what I talk about so as to facilitate, you know, that particular situation. You're at a wedding. I mean, you don't want to ruin someone's wedding because you're arguing about politics or shit like that, or ruin Thanksgiving dinner, or, you know, someone's party, or like, I'm not down with that. Shil Nye's still here. Can't see you, Shil. Shil Nye, the Fed guy. Let's see if I can see some of the stuff they've been saying. Oh, yelling about my Rhino FEMA boy. Great insult. My best friend is gay, super left-wing and gay, and Rob said he would let him watch his kid. My best friend, I have gay friends. My best friend is not gay. The friend I have that's gay that's closest to my best friend is probably conservative, centrist conservative. Yeah, I would absolutely let that person watch my kid. Fuck off. Right, and I agree with peer review. And what I do on here, I'm antagonistic sometimes because I feel like it. It's entertainment for me. If I was being paid, for example, if I got hired as a job to do a talk radio show, my demeanor would change slightly. I'd probably swear less for one. It'd be more composed. I'd probably not raise my voice as much, not get as excitable. That's fine. But right now, this is just entertainment for me. Now, does that mean that I'm not being myself? Nope, that's all I have. I'm not the smartest person. I'm not the most articulate person. I'm not the best debater, despite I think I'm pretty good. I think I'm pretty damn good. I think I'm right up there, but I don't think I'm head and shoulders the best at anything. The only thing that there's a reason to watch me is because I hope that my audience knows that I am being 100% completely authentic. For example, it would be easy for me to say with the audience I have, it would have been easy for me to grow my audience by being a QAnon person. It would be easy for me to grow my audience by saying, the hell with gay people, I'm anti-LGBTQ, that would be easy. I did a debate on Christian nationalism on the Crucible the other day. It would be easy for me to go the other way. Say, I'm a Christian nationalist. That would be easy, but I'm not. And all I could do is be authentic. And sometimes that means the majority of people that support me might disagree with an opinion of mine. But I think that's probably the main reason to watch me. Because you know that I'm not on here just chasing clout and just saying what I think my audience wants to hear, hoping to get another donation. I'm not doing that. Would I take your donation? Happily. But it's not worth selling out. That's it. And I think that the audience I have now overwhelmingly is such a fantastic audience because a lot of those people that were just, I like you because I liked one opinion of yours. Oh, but now I'm pissed off when you disagree with me. Many of those people have gone the wayside. And so that's why I'm left with people, even on the left, that'll watch me because they're like, yeah. Now, does that mean that I do things like sometimes it's 2 a.m. I'm like, fuck you, you piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. You don't care about perpetual war. Yeah, I say that sometimes. Should I think twice about saying that stuff? Maybe. But it's my show and I'm just having fun. Thanks, Clever Sprite. I appreciate it. If I approached this and it was like, my number one goal is not my own entertainment. My number one goal is to absolutely get Doug Mastriano elected to governor. Then my show would be massively different. By the way, coming up in about a week, my shows will be dedicated to trying to get Dr. Oz and Mastriano elected here in Pennsylvania. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm still doing it not because I'm getting paid by them, not because I stand to gain money or influence or clout. I'm doing it because that's what I want to do. I think it's a cause that I care about. It's important for the state and the country. Maybe you disagree. That's fine. But so I can separate. Some people can't. That's fine too. Some people can't. Some people say, I don't want no left-wing friend. Or I don't want no right-wing friend. Or I don't want no gay friend. Whatever. I want no Catholic friend. Yeah, I'll check out the link, Turn. By the way, is my Discord up and running now? I don't even know. I probably have Aftershock to thank for that. Oh, you just sent a direct message to me. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out, Turn. I see. Thanks, Z. Shil Nye said don't donate. Thank you. I'll take your 10 Canadian dollars. Thank you so much. Thanks, Shil Nye. I'm in record saying what? That my best friend is gay and I would let them watch my kid. Did I say that? I don't know who I would consider my best friend to be. It would almost change daily. I have a very good friend that would be in the top tier that's gay. Yeah, I'd absolutely let him watch my kid. I don't know that I've ever said, or if I would think that that is my best friend, because that's a friend that I met through other friends who I've become close with and good friends with. But I don't know. It would be hard for me to say that's my best friend, specifically because I met them through other friends of mine and I haven't known them as long. But sure, for the sake of argument, we'll say fuck it. You can call them a best friend. They're a friend that I absolutely would let watch my kid. Yep. No doubt in my mind. Yep. I'm on record saying I would fight on behalf of Democrats. And what was the context? Z is a Jackson Hinkle alt account. Well, hi, Jackson, if it's you. When did I say I'd fight in behalf of Democrats? I said that I recognize that the number one cause is corruption and that people that identify on the left, I would work together to sort out that corruption. Absolutely, I would. I would probably support a anti-corruption Democrat like Tulsi Gabbard. I definitely support an anti-corruption Democrat like Tulsi Gabbard who I have massive problems with, but I would support her over someone like a Jeb Bush. Yeah, I would. No doubt. And you? You're so beholden to the corrupt Republican Party that you'll vote for them no matter what? Is that what you're saying? It's too bad I don't see your post anymore unless I actively search for them, Shil Nye. What message am I ducking? Is anyone here think I'm ducking any sort of message whatsoever? What message am I not directly answering? Talked about my friend being gay and watching my kid. I said, yeah. Talked about, yep, there are circumstances where I would support Democrats over Republicans. Yep. Oh, Z's not Jackson. What am I ducking again? You can't even get that right, Fed boy. Go ahead. We'll give you the last word, Shil Nye. Go ahead. Shil Nye, the Fed guy. I hate those gays. Don't leave gays ever watch any kids. When's it time for violence? As he's sipping his soy latte, reporting to Christopher Wray. Let's give him the last word. Come on. Jackson's American, you donated Canadian. Oh, see, but that's exactly what Jackson would say, Z. I've talked to Jackson. I've enjoyed my conversations with Jackson. It was weird. Tree of Logic reached out to me to debate Jackson and Haas with her, and she said that they never responded to her. I don't know how much disagreement I have with them on the core issue of corruption. He's ducking. All right. Shil Nye, the Fed guy. Thanks so much for playing. So I do think I owe it to my audience to get rid of troll feds like yourself. So we'll see you. Did I see Haas's last video on MAGA communism? No, and that's what Tree of Logic wanted to debate him about. I kind of have an idea of where he's coming from. I completely disagree with the ideology of communism, and I can articulate why. But I do agree with the idea that if you're trying to sell a message, that you want to find things that you could agree on. And I've said this for a long time. Like, it seems like ages and ages ago, but in 2019, there was a big Second Amendment. I think it was 2019, maybe 2020, but there was a big Second Amendment rally in Virginia. And you might remember it was remarkably peaceful. And in fact, viral footage went of after the rally. People were actually cleaning stuff up, and the streets looked cleaner after this rally than before. And some friends of mine were doing a live show there, and I called in twice to talk on that show. And one of the things that they were talking about was that there was this sort of radical black activist group that was there pushing for Second Amendment rights. And I was like, good. Even if you disagree with them on everything else, if your number one important issue is the Second Amendment, you should take allies from any side of the ledger. Absolutely. My big issue is fighting corruption. I'll absolutely take a communist that's like, yes, I too am against this corruption. Great. Let's get rid of the corruption, then we'll debate communism. But it hardly matters if the corruption exists. That's how I feel. All right. Who we raiding? Oh, my boy Sparky. Raid him. It's one of the things that I don't think people understand politically. If you're a pragmatist and you're trying to win elections and have your point of view be the view that's most pushed by our culture, then you should be able to sell that point of view to a wide varying range of people. Right? Like, for example, I could say, let's say you think the war on drugs is bad. Okay. Well, what if you're talking to someone who is super conservative and is like, drugs are bad and they should be illegal, and you're just a stoner if you think the war on drugs is bad? Well, then you don't change your message. That would be inauthentic. But what you do is you say, or you don't change your ideology, you change the way you're packaging it. You say, well, aren't you against the cartels? Yeah, I'm against the cartels. Well, one of their primary funding mechanisms is because these drugs are illegal. And so that encourages a black market, which encourages these cartels, which do so much damage at the southern border. Oh, I didn't think of it that way. Do I like Cheetos mac and cheese? Never had it. I like Cheetos, somewhat. I've been cutting back on that sort of stuff, though. So, I told Tree of Logic, I was like, I don't think that that's Haas being disingenuous at all. I think that's just Haas saying, reach out to people that maybe disagree with a lot of me, but I could get them on my side on these issues that I think are important. And I think that's a smart thing to do. Right. That's smart. And that's not disingenuous. What's disingenuous is, saying, this happened. When I ran for office, we went to the first conferee meeting and it was in Potter County, and everyone said, yeah, term limits. I'd sign on to term limits. Then the second event was in Center County, and in Center County, a representative named Glenn Thompson. Center County split in half, so half of Center County is represented by Glenn Thompson. Glenn's the most senior Republican congressperson in Pennsylvania. They don't like term limits because that'd mean Glenn Thompson would leave. So the very people I saw just saying, yep, term limits in Potter County, 2 days later we're in Center County, they're saying, I'm against term limits. Now, if they'd have said, yeah, I'm for term limits in Potter, and then in Center said, well, I'm for term limits for other reasons, that's not disingenuous. That's speaking to your audience. But completely changing your position, that I find disingenuous. All right, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much, everyone. I should be on probably tomorrow night around 9 p.m., so look for me there. Enjoy this raid of my friend Aircraft Sparky, and as always, have a good one.
High abortion. I support that. But most of his policies I haven't paid that much attention to because